Hello, viewers. This is Vibhuti Jha, and this is just Jaipur Dialogue USA. And just as always, please like, subscribe, and support our channel. Give your feedback, and we value your feedback. Thank you. Now, today I wanted to talk about a very significant phenomenon. I call it a phenomenon primarily because from a time when mentioning Donald Trump's name or wearing a MAGA hat was considered in the woke society as an act of disgrace, and people used to look at you with suspicious eyes. Today, we are witnessing a phenomenal change, and that change relates to the fact that Trump's dance style has captured the imagination of sports, newscasters, and everybody else. In as much as in the National Football League, people scoring after scoring the touchdown, they were doing MAGA style dance as celebration of scoring a touchdown. I saw the videos of soccer players doing it in Europe. I saw newscasters from Greece and other places doing that. And that is what is important, how the MAGA movement has become a matter of great pride. In as much as Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, famous Mr. Brzezinski's daughter, who are married, who run a show called Joe Morning in MSNBC, who were Trump haters out and out. Trump haters out and out. They went to Mar-a-Lago to meet Trump and made a statement that we have to talk to him. CNN has fired lots of people. Changes are happening all over the world. And that's what is the interesting part. But that's the Trump story, from a matter of disgrace to a total acceptance and celebration with the mandate Americans have given him, to Indian Americans and India, which we are. We are Indian Americans here. How does it affect us? What must we expect from Donald Trump, who is the only leader in the world who made the statement that about Bangladesh Hindus? And he talked about protecting Hindu interests. And he also had said that he will build a Holocaust museum for Indian atrocities or Indians who have been killed in various genocides. Today, to talk about that matter, I have great pleasure in welcoming my friend, Dr. Bharat Barai, an oncologist who lives in Chicago, Indiana, practices in Chicago. I consider him, in my opinion, he's one of the most astute political observers, an activist who is an independent. I must make it clear, who is an independent. And he definitely has great interest of both countries right on his sleeves. So, Bharatji, welcome to the show.
Namaste.
And I wanted to ask you this question, that expectation is a big word. How does India and Indian Americans manage Mr. Donald Trump's expectation train, which is huge?
Well, it depends on different fields. Indian Americans may have their philosophy, their own thinking. What to expect out of the Trump administration for next 4 years is little different and may not necessarily coincide with our own ideology. And different Indian Americans may have some different ideology. To give you an example, when it comes to the female reproductive rights, I support it, which is different than what President Trump, though he is ambiguous about it, or Republicans do. Some sort of sensible gun control. I'm not opposed to people who legitimately need guns for protection from having it, but being able to buy it in Walmart at will, that's certainly not consistent with my thinking. So that's where I would differ with the Republicans. But there are many other areas where I would agree with President Trump and Republicans. Starting with, let's say, Indian American community. We have prospered on our own with our own hard work in various fields. And the Republican philosophy that government should tax minimum, control minimum, but allow people to be entrepreneurial, come up with new ideas, new innovation, new ingenuity, and ultimately contribute towards the economic growth, technological growth of the country. We are very much for it. If you look at most of the Indian Americans, they came with either eight, $9 or $10 in their pockets. They came here, they work hard, they educated themselves, they live modestly, and they have built up their lives. So that is more consistent with Republican philosophy than with Democratic philosophy of everything should be free to everybody at no cost to anybody, but it never is no cost to anybody. It is cost to the people who are hardworking. So, yes, I am a compassionate independent. There are people in the society who are not as fortunate either because of their circumstances or because of their luck or because of natural calamity. Certainly, the society should support them during these difficult times. But then people who are lazy bums who don't want to work because government is giving them good amount of money. And when we were looking for why the inflation occurred in time of Biden, well, one of the reason was this: people were given 1.5 times to 2 times what they made working during the COVID time. And that was Nancy Pelosi's thinking. We need to give them a lot more. Well, what happened? Many people decided not to work because if you simply say that I am afraid of going to work because of COVID for a period of 1.5 to 2 years, sit at home, watch soap operas. So people got a lot more money into their hands than what they would have earned working on their own, and they decided not to work. The other thing that happened because of that, there was a worker shortage. Well, the population had not gone down. Yes, about 1 million people died of COVID in USA, but majority of them were above the age of 65 who were retired people anyway. So the workforce reduction because of COVID was relatively minor. And some of the industries are shut down. So that should have nullified the need of those workers. But now, because there was a worker shortage, because people were staying home, collecting 1.5 times to 2 times their salaries, the industries, to keep them working, had to pay people 9, 10, 15, 20% wage increases. So what do you expect? A, people who are not working got bunch of government money, which was a borrowed money. And number two, the industries, to try to keep the workers because of perceived worker shortage, had to pay extraordinary pay raises. And third thing, at that time, the immigration was virtually stopped. For a growing economy, you need more manpower. And the people were not coming from other countries to provide that workforce. So, going back to the area of inflation, I think people expect that now the inflation will stay relatively modest, around 2.5% range. The government will not make the mistake of flooding the economy with money, and the Republicans have a more reputation of tight on the purse, managing the economy better rather than give free everything to everybody. As far as the relations between India and USA are concerned, they will become more friendly. A statement that is made by a friend is taken at a lot more value when the same statement is made by an independent person, and worse, made by an enemy or person that you don't perceive as a friend. So now, when Trump and Modi talk, they will talk as friends. They have built up good friendship and bond between them. In the field of economic cooperation, I think things will continue, except in you talk about tariffs. Because if, just like Narendra Modi saying, make India and India first, Trump has a policy of make in America and America first. So primarily, it will affect the Chinese manufactured goods and Mexican manufactured goods or Mexican bundled goods. Vibhuti, a new industry had started since he imposed tariffs, and Biden also continued those tariffs on Chinese made goods. China started cheating. They started sending things to Mexico. It will be packaged in Mexico, and now it will be exported to USA duty free or tariff free under NAFTA. So that industry is growing big, and people became aware of this kind of cheating by routing it through Mexico. That's when he said that even the Mexican made goods, which is really many times not Mexican made goods, but Chinese made good, bundled and packaged in Mexico and exported to USA,
Right.
yeah, that will be come under a lot of scrutiny and tariff. So India will have manufactured goods under tariff, but think it this way: most of India's export to USA is intellectual software that will not be affected. So yes, there will be some effect as far as the tariffs are concerned, but it will be a very minor thing. As far as the Indian students are concerned, they will be welcome, except those few stupid ones who were demonstrating along with the uh, jihadis on the campuses. As Trump has said, they might be sent back. So they should be aware that if they mess around, in fact, Trump made a statement day before yesterday that those universities which allow this kind of demonstrations and anti-Semitism and blocking the students who want to study, they those institutions may lose their accreditation and lose federal funding.
Right.
And he made a very bold statement that we don't want US taxpayers to pay for making next generation of jihadis, terrorists. So few Indian students participated in this. And by the way, many of them were New York taxi drivers also. They were not all students.
Yes.
So it was a mix of some students. Think of it. Columbia University has 50,000 students. There were about 200 to 250 participated, created tanks. They ransacked the library and some of the things. And they were joined by half of them being New York taxi drivers and some stupid, misguided, misinformed Indian students. So there were few. So now they will be on the notice that if you mess around and try to threaten any people, I mean, especially Jewish students, then there will be severe consequences for the institutions, for the accreditation, federal funding, and probably many of them will be deported back. Their student visas canceled. So that is about the academics. On the military side, I think there will be a lot more relaxation, especially for export of high-tech technology to India. I mean, that was a bipartisan thing. It started a few years ago under Trump, continued under Biden, because both the countries, they perceive it to be in their best interest to be friends and have highest military capabilities. India is not threatening United States. India is not threatening Europe. India is not threatening anybody, not even China or Pakistan. If they
Right.
keep friendly relationship with India, India does not want to threaten anybody. We want to live in peace within our secure borders, but we don't want Pakistan and now Bangladesh joining the rank of jihadis to try to threaten India and send the terrorists across the borders. So militarily, I think there will be good cooperation. Anti-terrorism, of course, there will be excellent cooperation with United States. I don't know what United States under Trump will do with so-called Five Eyes, which seem to be partially blind, because Canada has been a culprit, shielding those Khalistanis, shielding those jihadis, even though India has made numerous extradition requests for the gangsters who are involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking. Canada has done nothing. They have not convicted anybody who was responsible for blowing up 329 innocent passengers on Air India Kanishk since 1985. And now what we know is that Trump did not have good opinion about Canada, especially under Trudeau. And I hope whatever pressure Canada was putting on USA, saying, oh, take this killing of Najar seriously, I don't think Trump is going to take that seriously like Biden administration used to do. So there will be less pressure. There will be less pressure on India on name of human rights. Vibhuti, this human right business has become a big political and colonial tool. In the old times, they used to go and invade other countries' territory and establish the rule. Now they are using selective use of at will human rights and try to chastise somebody else. And the biggest joker is this US Commission on International Freedom of Religion. Can you believe there are three Muslims who are sitting there, and there is one Sarkari Hindu who is sitting there who has worked under the US administration, who has no independent voice. She is more than a rubber stamp, Haji Ha, Haji Ha. So that commission has become a joke. And I should tell you, even under the Congress government, that so-called commission was never allowed to come to India. They had come once, they and in Amnesty International in Chicago, maybe 20, 30 years ago. They tried to talk to me and I hooted them out. I said, what are you trying to do? This is a selective use and abuse of the word human rights to try to suppress other country. It has become a neo-colonial tool. When four Muslims are lynched in India, oh, it becomes a big human right issue. But so many Hindus are killed by the terrorists in Kashmir, they never speak a word about it. All the Bangladeshi Hindus that were killed by the jihadi mobs in Bangladesh, nobody spoke a word about it. Neither Biden, nor Kamala Harris, nor Tony. So, so many temples were ransacked in Bangladesh, more than 100. Not a word from the administration. So all this talk about human rights is a nonsense. It's a political tool. And I think Trump is not going to care too much about it. And I don't know whether he will appoint some independent Hindus to that commission. But whether he appoints or not, it's a very discredited organization. So politically, I think there will be good bonhomie between the Indian Americans because of his pro-India, pro-Hindu stand.
Thank you very much for very, very comprehensive opening statement that was so remarkable in all its senses, I would put it. You refer to the USCIRF. That becomes an institutional matter. State Department runs it. They appoint. So we know that Islamic penetration of the US administration has been very powerful, and that's how they are able to manage that. The one Hindu who is there in USCIRF, they use it as a irritation, to use the Hindi ka word which is the most appropriate. जो उंगली करते हैं भारत को on USCIRF human rights, very appropriate matter that you brought out. What will be Marco Rubio's stand, because he is going to be the Secretary of State now? It's not the Blinken, 1-2 punch, good cop, bad cop. So what are the likelihood we can expect from Marco Rubio? Because he has been very pro-India. He has been very anti-terrorism. He's been very anti-China. So it looks like he will be more pro-India because for the first ever time, I believe, the famous statements about India being a strategic partner and natural ally, we may see that flourish better ever in Trump administration than it would happen, or than it happened in the Biden administration. How do you see that we are able to put together a candidate who becomes an equal representative? And you very astutely mentioned the Sarkari Hindu. We don't need that. We don't need a Hino there. We need somebody who understands and who will be able to do something. So in addition to that, how does the Indian community demand from the Trump administration what we must give? Because these are mutual, benefit scenarios. So if we do not are not in a position to give something, how can we expect something one-sided? That is a question that will be asked again.
Well, let's take 3 points. One about Marco Rubio.
Yes.
Marco Rubio is a very intelligent and very uh, outspoken senator, and now he has been named as Secretary of State. And as you rightly pointed out, he is pro USA, anti communist, because his parents are of Cuban ancestry. He is anti China because China is a communist country that suppresses its people and has ambition over USA. He will. He is also very strongly pro-Israel. So he is anti-terrorist and anti-jihadis. You know, most people understand what jihadis are up to, what the Iranians are up to. They realize that the whole mischief in the Middle East is Iranian directed. The money that Biden administration released, almost $100 billion to the Iranians, he might have done in good faith, thinking that now with the release of money, the Iranians will come around, become a little more sensible and a little bit more cooperative. Well, then I would have to say that Biden was backstabbed by the Iranian mullahs and ayatollahs. They used that money to support Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and Islamic Jihad. The entire mischief in the Middle East, the war, has been created by the Iranians. That is another area where Marco Rubio will be very strong. And Biden administration was trying to micromanage how Israel was trying to defend itself. Oh, don't do this, don't do this, don't attack this. We understand that the United States is a supporter of Israel and it's one of the arms supplier. But this was a situation, a war that Israel did not start. There was a ceasefire till October 6th. There was no war. Though sporadically Hamas was firing the rockets from Gaza into Israel and killing Israeli innocent civilians. It was the jihadis, the terrorists, who started the war. Now we realize we sympathize with innocent Palestinians. But who is responsible for their plight? Hamas, Hezbollah. There could be ceasefire tomorrow if Hamas was to stop firing rockets and hand over all the hostages. Hezbollah can do the same thing. Nothing had happened on Lebanese border. It was Hezbollah to start to fight with at the instance of their Iranian Ayatollah masters. They started firing rockets. They could have used the money for betterment of people of Lebanon. Hamas could have used the money for betterment of people of Gaza. All that they built was underground tunnels for military purposes. The money that was given, instead of being used for the education and betterment of people of Gaza, they used that money for rockets and bombs. And think of it this way: why does UNRWA, on one side you sympathize with the civilians, but what is happening? Why does the rest of the world have to keep on supplying food, education, housing to the Palestinians while Iranians keep on supporting this terrorist? That money could have been used for betterment of the civilians, to build up infrastructure for civilians, to build up hospitals, to build up some industries so these people can be employed. In fact, the only employment in Gaza was becoming member of Hamas and becoming a terrorist. So Marco Rubio will take much stronger, total independent stand, saying that, hey guys, put your house in order, stop terrorism, and live as peaceful neighbor with Israel. I think Palestinians and Lebanese can take cue from Israel. This is the country that in last 75 years has become a super technological leader. Many Arab countries realize that. Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, Morocco, they have already done treaty with Israel and United Arab Emirates. And I hope someday most of those terrorist countries realize that this is taking them nowhere and it is better to be a good neighbor with Israel, learn from them, and use that technology to try to improve the lives of the Arab citizens. That will be a real plus, and that is what the Abraham Accord was
Yes.
about. And I think Marco Rubio will give push to Abraham Accord so that the lives of everybody can be peaceful, the Arabs as well as Israelis. By the way, I should point out, Vibhuti, that this land where Israel is a 4,000-year-old land where Moses established Israel. And the so-called West Bank, which the Israelis call Judea and Samaria, we use the word many times, oh, Good Samaritan. Where did the word Good Samaritan come? It came from Samaria, which is really the West Bank. So this was the territory that was occupied by the Ottoman Empire. And then in First World War, after the Ottoman Empire was defeated, the Britishers got the mandate, and that's when they declared Balfour Declaration in 1917 to divide it into Jordan, into Palestine and Israel. Till then, there has never been a Palestinian state. And it was Jordan that was supposed to be a Palestinian state. But in 1967 war, after they lost that West Bank, Jordan said, we don't want those Palestinians. You know, they are unwanted. Nobody talks about in 1970, almost 100,000 Palestinians, and this is all talk, were killed by the Jordanians when they wanted to have more freedom.
That's right. I mean, that's a very, very good and accurate description of the challenge. One of the things that you mentioned about the jihadi part and the Palestinian part on the campuses here, the leftist ideology and the fanaticism of Islamist Palestinian Hamas, they have somewhere along the line penetrated the universities in America big time. But what you see here is also very fascinating, is the the cry over support to Israel here. Somewhere along the line, the entire Hamas Hezbollah ecosystem and those systems, they have recognized that Israel can be defeated only if it doesn't get American support. And as a result of which, they are making a political push in America. They captured the Democratic Party ideology completely. AOC and Ilhan Omar, no, AOC, Ilhan Omar and Tlaib and others, they have been on record making absolutely, anti-Semitic statements about Israel. I mean, they want Democratic Party to become anti-Israel party. Do you think that element played out against the Democratic Party in this country?
Absolutely. Remember, there were about 250 students that demonstrated, maybe with 200 more taxi drivers. So it looked like 400, 500. But Columbia has 50,000 students. Same also most of the other universities. So what did the other students think of them? They said that their studies were interrupted. Many of these private universities charge like 50,000, 70,000 tuitions. Many of the students have to borrow the money
Right.
to go to school. So their studies were sort of interrupted. What about their parents? If I send my son or my daughter to school, pay this heavy amount of tuition, and if they cannot get educated because some jihadis want to make their political point, I mean, yes, everybody should have freedom to express their opinion in a peaceful, lawful manner. So if all those students were doing was putting their play cards, fine, they have right to do it. But they should have done it in a peaceful manner, in a prescribed way, then nobody would have interfered with them. The students, the 49,500 others, would have been able to continue their studies. But you are right, many of the professors, they have become woke semi-jihadis. We saw that even at time of Stop Hindutva movement, where some of the so-called left-wing professors like Angna Chatterjee and gang, they joined this kind of thing. What support do they have among the population? Nothing, nothing. They got into that position. They think that their left-wing woke ideology is something that is going to entice the people. So in spite of having so many negatives against Trump, all the cases that were going on and everything, people still thought that as a package, candidate Trump is better than do nothing or woke Kamala Harris. That's how it turned out. So the parents of 49,500 students who were silent ultra majority, those students who were eligible to vote, I think most of them voted against the Democratic Party, and I fully endorse that. I mean, there is a small minority even among the Indian Americans. Our children below the age of 30 who subscribe to the theory that everybody should get everything at no cost to anybody, those are the people who probably voted for Kamala Harris. Some of them took pride that, oh, yes, a woman will become a president. And I agree with that sentiment. A woman should have equal right to be considered for president. But then that should not be the single criteria that because she is a woman, no matter how disqualified or unqualified or less qualified she is. I mean, whosoever is the most qualified person, male or female, should become the president. So, yes, some of the votes of Indian American youngs went to her. Some who supported the reproductive rights, yes, I support those too. But that should not be a single one or two issue criteria. We have to take the candidate as a package. And yes, Trump had the habit of insulting many people. Uh, so many things happen. I don't want to say that Trump was an ideal candidate, but when you compare the two, most of the Indian Americans made their judgment. And when I talk on the street, this is not a scientific poll, but I have lots of friends in New York, Washington, uh, Silicon Valley, Chicago. And I tell you, almost everybody that I talk to voted for Trump. It's surprising that,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris has partly Indian descent, 50%, but then she never tried to make out of anything. She never tried to attach herself or approach the Indian American community for support. It was like either taken for granted, or well, they only have about 1.5 to 2 million votes, so it doesn't count. Somehow or other, whatever was her philosophy. At time of Hillary Clinton, there was a big fundraiser in New York, and I went there, and people collected over 1.5 to 2 million dollars. There was no such effort for her. The other thing that hurt among Indian Americans is White House invitation to Khalistanis 3 days before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit. Now, I was pissed off at that, and Ajay Bhutoria, who was sitting with us in New York at that time, everybody who was at the dining table said, Ajay, what the heck is going on here? Why is White House inviting Khalistanis? Look at this, what Khalistanis have done. Whatever done, Canada, they attacked Hindu temples. They attacked the Indian High Commission. They openly took out the floats, showing the scenes of shooting Indira Gandhi by the rifle of the two Sikh bodyguards and her bleeding. On one side, Trudeau says, oh, we don't promote violence, we don't promote this. Has any Khalistani been arrested for what was shown? No. Has any Khalistani been arrested for desecrating Hindu temples so far? No. Has any Khalistani been arrested for desecrating the Indian High Commission? No. Same question in USA. The Long Island Bap's temple was desecrated. Nobody has been arrested. The Hindu temple in San Jose was desecrated. Nobody has been arrested. San Francisco consulate was attacked. Nobody has been arrested. So a Gandhi statue right in front of Indian embassy in Washington D.C. was desecrated. No, this guy Panoon, this guy is openly threatening to blow up the airliners, killing innocent passengers, and he's being protected as he is a victim. He is a terrorist number one who is openly threatening to kill innocent passengers, and nothing has been done. And now, on top of that, you call the Khalistanis. What do you do it for? Now, granted, the most of the Sikhs in Canada, most of the Sikhs in USA are decent, patriotic people. They have nothing to do with Khalistanis. And in India, most Sikhs are the most decent, patriotic Indians. So it's a very tiny, ultra minority of mischief makers that are getting the attention, and not most of the other Sikhs who are decent citizens.
And that's all happening in Democrat run states. So, in my conversations with people, just as you have interacted with lots of them, this was a burning issue because this is the issue conversation that I was having. So, what has actually the Democratic Party done for us, to the Indian Americans? As you rightly said, they were taking us for granted. They knew that we live in blue states and they have nowhere else to go, kind of feeling. We got taken for granted by the Democratic Party, and they gave incentives in the name of human rights, which you earlier on mentioned, and freedoms to people who were totally anti-UNI and anti-India. So this is what was the problem with Democratic Party, and I'm very personally delighted that Indian participation was far more visible in this election than ever before. And the percentage of people who responded to Donald Trump as a package, which you very rightly said, nobody is perfect, each one has a flaw. So when the package was viewed, Trump emerged as a winner. And as one of the American hosts had said once, she was a bad horse in Kentucky Derby. There was no way she was going to win the race. So, that was also a very important consideration said. Now, I wanted to also talk to you about the, the vicious attack on two people who have who have worn their Hindu identity on their sleeves, on their chest, on their mouth, on their head, and very proudly walked into our Tulsi and Vivek. Whereas these people showed up, as I say, they showed up in their individual identity, something that Kamala Harris was hesitant to admit herself in that fashion. The attack on Tulsi now, because she's a DNI, going to be DNI, and Vivek, who wants to cut down create an efficiency sector, by AOC, many other channels, is that she is the warmonger, whereas she took on the military industrial complex. She is anti-war, and she had experiences directly related to her own being actively in the war zone where she participated. How do you view this? The Islamic people, are they suffering from fear and concerns? Ki ab mera kya hoga? Or what will happen? Because there are two people who are very bold and brave, open about their Hindu identity. How do you see that play out? Because there was a Bangladeshi guy, Chaudhry fellow, who made a statement that, oh, we are disappointed voting for Trump because his policies are going to be the same pro-Israel. We made a mistake. And I asked, what is the proof that you voted? Or are you just trying to play the game? Your thoughts?
Well, they were playing the game. They realized, look, in this country, if you look at it, vote only 4% of the voters in the survey gave foreign policy as important in trying to decide who to vote for. Economy was about 34%. I think illegal migration, which we didn't talk about, but hope we talk, was about 31%.
Yeah, I see. Just to tell you, it is on the agenda,
So,
illegal immigration, that I want to touch upon. Yes.
then 14% about reproductive rights, and only 4% about foreign policy. An ordinary American does not care. I mean, I have about 46 employees in our practice office. They don't care about foreign policy. They care more about bread and butter issue and, of course, about illegal immigration. And that was correctly found in the survey. Now, if you go by religious identity, Hindu voters are about, I would say, 1.4, 1.5%. The Muslim voters are also same about 1.4% or so. But among the Muslims, interesting thing has happened. I know many Syrian doctors in our hospitals. You know what they tell me? They are pro-Israel. You will be surprised. How come Muslim doctors from Middle East are talking pro-Israel? They want Hamas to be finished up. They want Hezbollah to be finished up. They are educated, good Muslims who realize what a harm these terrorists are doing. They say that Syria has been destroyed by the Iranians who are helping Hezbollah, Hamas. So among the Muslims, the Middle Eastern Muslims, except Palestinians, were all for finishing off Hamas and Hezbollah. They said there is no Middle Eastern country that has the wherewithal to try to take on these monsters. So only Israel can destroy them. So it is good. Now, among Pakistanis, there was an interesting split. Previously, they were all on one side, but now it has become pro Imran Khan and anti Imran Khan lobby. So even the Pakistanis were split who to support because they realize that it was, or they think that it was Donald Low, the Assistant Secretary of State in charge of South Asian affairs, that managed to topple Imran Khan in collusion with army and Shehzad Sabaz and sent him to jail. Same thing is happening about Bangladeshis. We need to see how it crystallizes, but many Bangladeshis, they suspect that it was Donald Lu who went to Bangladesh and engineered the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina. Now, I don't know how Sheikh Hasina was popular, unpopular in Bangladesh. It is their domestic issue. But Sheikh Hasina claimed that Donald Lu had demanded a base on one of the Bangladeshi island in Bay of Bengal for USA, and she refused. I don't know whether she is right or wrong, but at least she has made a public statement to that effect. So there may be split even among the Bangladeshis, pro-Awami League and jihadis. So we'll see how that turns out. But look at the Jewish vote. The Jewish vote, which is really almost 2.5, 2.6% of American votes, Trump had said, why should any Jewish vote or Jews should vote for Kamala Harris? Now, granted, Kamala Harris' husband is a Jew himself. So most of the Jews, from what I talk, voted for Trump. And that is Trump's open statement about protecting Israel. Though Biden and Kamala Harris were sort of mild to moderately pro Israel, they were often needling Israel, interfering, trying to, oh, we'll put arms embargo, we do this. If you side with your friend, you don't threaten them with arms embargo. Israel is a small country and they are trying to defend themselves. They did not start the war. They are trying to finish off Hamas and Hezbollah, which most people, even many Middle East Muslim people, want Hamas and Hezbollah to be finished. So USA should have never got involved in trying to micromanage and threaten. And that's where they diverted a lot of Jewish vote for Trump. That's why he got such a big majority
That's
every
right. Yeah. The whole country looks red.
yeah.
Even large chunks of New York state and large chunks of California look red. That's a truly a remarkable mandate Mr. Trump has won, and it wouldn't have been possible but for the breakdown that you displayed just now, that various segments of the people saw the package Donald Trump was coming up with. Before we close today, I have two more issues I want your thoughts on. One of them is the immigration issue, and with specific reference to the concern that Indians have whether Indian students will receive same welcome that they had received earlier years, not last year or in previous administration. Will Trump be tough on Indian students coming here? What would he do for regularizing the H-1B category, where those people are so many of them who are contributing to the ecosystem of this country, paying taxes, living peacefully? That's most important. They are contributors to this system most effectively. Yet, every Democrats have treated them with utter contempt, and Republicans not really. They have done nothing about it because they will always vote for Democrats as true to the Indian psyche. Do you think Trump will take a proactive stand and say that, hey, I regularize all the H-1B guys because you have been here for years, your children are here, and you are STEM guys, the kind of people America needs as new immigrants to this country? Your thought on that?
Okay, let's take students first. My belief is that the students from India will continue to get admissions to US places as before. I don't think Trump will do anything to restrict the student visa. Now, interestingly, last year, Trump had mentioned that all Indian students who graduate with STEM degrees, they should be given green card right away.
Right.
I don't know whether he really meant it or it was one of the off the cuff remark. But if he really believes, and if it only talked about not all Indian students, but about STEM, science, mathematics, technology. So if that happens, that will be great. But remember, immigration quota is a subject of legislation. The president does not have the power to do what he wants to do. Now, interestingly, last Wednesday, when on 13th of November, there were 33 congressmen and senators, and we raised this issue. And I will quote Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who was there. I raised this issue, and here was his answer. By the way, he was very friendly. Since he's a doctor, he's an ophthalmologist by
Okay.
profession. I
Yeah.
said, should I call you Senator Paul or should I call you Dr. Paul? He said, what is your specialty? I said, oncologist, hematologist. He says, call me Rand. And then we raised this issue about 7,000 quota of professional visa, all those who have the H-1B. He says that 2 years ago, they had proposed the deal to abolish the countrywide quota, but it would have needed 60 votes. They went to Senator Dick Durbin and told Dick Durbin that let's do this. It is in the best interest of United States. And the right now the long line, almost 140 years or so. He says, according to Dick Durbin, they wanted all those irregulars, illegals, to be given path to citizenship. He says we could not agree to allow 18 million illegal immigrants to be granted citizenship, and the deal broke. So I'm just quoting Senator Rand Paul from November 13, 2024, conversation in the Duxon Senate building. So what we are going to do is again try to plead that these are very productive citizens, those who have received H-1B visa. They are contributing to economic might, the electronic might of United States, the software might of United States. And if they become useful US citizens, they will contribute immensely to the prosperity and economic growth of United States. Uh, Now that they have all the three branches, I hope that this is taken care of. If they remove this cap, then lot many more Indians who are waiting for conversion from H-1B to green card will be taken care of. Will he reduce the family quota and give more to professional? I wish so, because right now a lot of useless people who are on welfare simply because they are brothers, sisters, they come into this country. Now, yes, the quota has to be there, but it may be reduced and transferred to professional quota. One of the biggest target has to be the so-called diversity lottery. Obama, started doling out this diversity lottery, thinking that we must have some people from Afghanistan, some people from Uzbekistan, one people from Tajikistan, and most of those visas went to this kind of countries. But those people came with nothing else. Many of them have become taxi drivers. Instead of using so-called diversity lottery and giving out to people with no special qualification, if that quota of 50,000 so-called diversity, that should be shut down and that should be diverted to professionals like H-1B visas who are waiting, so that United States can be inhabited by more talented, smart people rather than useless people simply coming by lottery and really contributing very little to United States.
I hope so too. And I also sincerely hope that the Indian Americans, particularly who are on H-1B, I hope they become not as a labor union, but definitely build their own capacity to submit a petition to the federal government that, hey, listen, you are regularizing everybody who is coming in under very suspicious categories, who are literally breaking the law. We were law abiding, we followed the law, and you are punishing us. The appeal has to be made to the government for the government to do something about it.
See,
But the last question, yeah,
Vibhuti, they can make that appeal, but they cannot vote. So it is
correct.
responsibility of people like me and many others to try to represent to the congressman and senator, because yes, I am a US citizen, I am a voter, and I am financial contributor, and you can be assured we will take up this issue of H1B visa conversion.
Good. Very good.
The other
And
thing,
it has to be pointed out to people that it is Dick Durbin, again a Democrat. See, the Democrats are the ones who are taking the Indians for granted. This is my belief. It's a, what was a suspicion once is a belief now. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, one of the very, very strong subject, is the health of America, the physical health of America. Now, you are an oncologist. You know how to establish and cure cancer, how to identify and cure cancer. Robert Kennedy Jr., he's been attacked by Mike Pence, former vice presidential candidate, that he is unfit. And suddenly Robert Kennedy Jr. is being attacked because he is talking about health of America, trying to change that. Your thought on his ability to do that? He is the right candidate, and his zeal to do that, just as Musk and Vivek are trying to bring efficiency in government. Your thoughts on that?
I don't know much about Robert Kennedy except his disdain for the COVID vaccine,
Yeah.
which he was wrong, of course. As a physician, I can tell you. Now, Health and Human Services Secretary, they're really more a ceremonial post.
Okay.
It, it's things happen in spite of them, not because of them.
Hmm.
There is a big bureaucracy when it comes to Medicare, Medicaid, and health. And it is the Congress that has to make the regulation. Even if he wants certain things, he cannot do it as a Health and Human Services Secretary. And the laws have been written, and unless Congress is willing to modify those laws and President signs it into laws, it cannot make really any change in the healthcare system. So yes, I have skepticism to what exactly he will try to do. He can try to make statements, but unless the Congress changes how Medicare, Medicaid, and other things operate, he is just a ceremonial Health and Human Services Secretary. Now, many times it happens that people who have some extreme or weird views, when they become responsible or they are put in charge of it, they moderate their views. So we'll have to see what Robert Kennedy Jr. does. But his statement about the COVID vaccine was certainly not a correct one.
Okay. That said, but he is also talking about the food that we take. He's talking about the food industry that dishes out all these sugary items and the false advertising, which leads to obesity. Now, if he will he be able to curtail large food manufacturing companies that they who manufacture all sugary fatty stuff without full disclosure or whatever that is? That's his
Again,
focus.
all the food has to be labeled about its content. This is where, Vibhuti, the role of personal responsibility comes. If you are buying, then you better look at the label what you are buying. All the food has the printed label. Nobody forces you to drink Coca-Cola with sugar. You can drink diet or Coke Zero also. That is our personal responsibility. Like in my case, I haven't had regular Coca-Cola or regular Pepsi for years together. That is my personal choice. Yes, the food companies and many of the retail like McDonald's and Burger King, they all try to advertise double cheeseburger and then try to put big packages of French fries containing 700 calories. So that is where the personal responsibility is. I don't know what he will be able to do except probably putting the labels, or that might require that, okay, if you want sugary labeled Coca Cola, then you have to pay 10 cents more. I don't think, except jaw boning, they really will be able to do much. Is there a room for some sort of moderation? Absolutely. But that's where the individual responsibility comes. Nobody forces you to eat paneer. You go take a packet of paneer and read at the back how much fat does a paneer contain. Now, after reading that it contains 24% fat, if you still want to eat paneer, okay, do it. And then if you get heart attack at young age, thank the paneer guys. You are wondering about so many cases of young people in India getting heart attack. In Ahmedabad, when I went, in Sankalp, if you get a dosa, they bring a whole chunk, 100 grams of Amul butter and dump it on it. I said, sir, I came here to eat dosa, not to eat butter. But butter is 100% saturated fat. Same
That's
in
right.
paneer contains high amount of saturated fat. So if you eat so much of butter, if you eat so much of ghee, if you eat so much of paneer, well, then you are not taking good care of yourself. So,
Right.
having some sort of exercise in your daily living, trying to eat with moderation, know what you are eating, limiting your calories, and avoiding high sugar, high fat food is our personal responsibility, not Robert Kennedy's.
That's so well said because I subscribe to the same thought, same view that whatever you do, you are responsible for that. One of my biggest learnings from Mahabharata, Gita, and Ramayana is it's a very classic thing. No character has been called bad. No character has been called bad in either of these two granth of ours or way of life. What I took the lesson is you have to bear the consequences of the choices and decisions you make. Whether you were Kaushalya, whether you were Lakshman, whether you were Bhishma Pitama or Dronacharya, you had to bear the consequences of the choices and decisions you make. And I'm very glad about that because I did that. My propensity to put on weight is greater than one, if is to use the economics language. If you give me a glass of water with lot of affection, that adds calorie on me. So I had to become very careful. So I did that. And I'm proud of myself the way I am. And I take care of myself because that's individual. I eat everything, whatever I want, but I eat in moderation. So, what Robert Kennedy, I think, will do is begin a massive education campaign that this is what sugar does to you. Schools feeding is very important. And those changes will come on the administrative level. I totally agree with you. He may not be able to change a whole lot of things, but hopefully on the educational front, a lot will happen. Bharat, it has been an awesome conversation. I enjoyed it listening to your thoughts. And now I know why we get along well because we think alike. We are on the same path. So, what do you
While
believe
we
in?
are closing, I should mention one thing about Trump, where
Yeah.
no drugs, no alcohol. He
No,
doesn't
no.
drink alcohol.
Right. Think about it. Trump proudly says he has never touched alcohol, no smoking, no drugs, nothing. That's what he tells his children to do that. That's personal decision and choice
Yeah.
that you have to exercise. So, viewers, thank you very much for staying with us. As I always say, Satyameva Jayate, Satya to triumph, truth to triumph, you and I will have to stand up and fight for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.